Hello and welcome to the program. I am Oyi Adekunle. It's been days now since the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, announced the dissolution of the Federal Anti-Robbery Squad, Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, popularly called SARS, of course, a police unit of the Nigeria Police Force, which has been repeatedly accused of brutality and gross human rights abuse. But this has done nothing to quell protests which have spread across the country. The protesters have remained resolute in their demands, and they're saying, in addition to this disbandment, the Nigeria Police Force needs a complete overhaul in the way of reforms. They're also demanding the release of all arrested protesters, justice for all victims of police brutality, and compensation for their families. And in the midst of the End SARS protest, we've also seen another group which appears to be pro-SARS expressing their displeasure over the disbanding of the SARS units. But let's now hear from a security expert on this topical issue. Kabir Adamu, a security risk management expert, joins us now via Skype from Abuja. Mr. Adamu, thank you very much for joining us on the program. You've seen the widespread protests all across the country. What exactly do you make of it?
It's a demand by Nigerian youth to bring an end what they perceive as brutality, heavy-handedness, extortion, and several other criminal practices by a unit of the police, which is now disbanded, that is Special Anti-Robbery Squad. The challenge is that several other units of the police are subsumed by Nigerians under this SARS department. So there is the IRT, there is the ICU, SPU, name them. At the last count, there were about 14 of them. And to the average Nigerian, all of these 14 are seen as the SARS. Now, yes, the government has disbanded SARS, but what of the other 13? So the demand by Nigerian youth is for an end to police brutality. And incidentally, brutality by all the security agencies, even though the focus now is on the police. But if we go by the reports released by the Human Rights Commission, it's not just the police that carries out this type of extrajudicial and heavy-handed approach to law enforcement.
I mean, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, that's what it's called. As the name rightly puts it, it was created for a specific purpose. So how is it now that we see officers basically just judging people based on their appearance, brutalizing people? We've seen gross human rights abuse across the country, not just in one. So how did this special unit, which was set up for a special purpose, get to this point?
For the purposes of time, I would give two reasons. The first one is the police itself, the Police Act. Inherent in that act are unfortunately certain provisions that allows the use of force. I will refer us to the Force Order 273, which allows a police officer to use force. The second aspect of the provisions within the Police Act and other governing laws of policing in Nigeria is the absence of the principles of proportionality and necessity. Policing all over the world and law enforcement as a whole all over the world recognizes these two principles. So you are only allowed to use your arms where there is a necessity, either to protect yourself or to protect another law-abiding citizen from being harmed by the suspect. The other one is proportionality. Even when you use your arms, to what proportion can you use your arm? If someone is just holding, let's say, a toothpick, and you know he can harm you with that toothpick, do you now shoot him on his chest or on his head, knowing that that will kill him, or you shoot him on a limb just to immobilize him and then, detain him for whatever purposes after that? So those aspects are unfortunately missing within the laws governing policing in Nigeria. Another danger is, even though force is allowed, the principle of the judicious use of that force unfortunately has not been clarified within our existing laws. So that's the first thing. The law itself allows the use of force without any delineation. The second aspect is that these tactical units, such as SARS and several other tactical units, we do not know what their operational procedures are. All police departments, all law enforcement agencies have operational procedures. Now, when they approach me as a citizen, it is that operational procedure that is the Bible with which they can, relate with me. So where that operational procedure is lacking in substance or does not even delineate their functions, then it is left for them to use their whims and caprices. So I think that is unfortunately what happened to SARS. Their operational procedure was not very clear. Till date, even as a practitioner in that field, I haven't seen the operational procedure for SARS. And it's only when I see that I will know whether it inherent in it has the protection of my civil liberties and rights. And the fact that they can meet me, collect my phone, abuse my privacy, violate my privacy, go through my phone, or just by my mere sight, just because I have dreadlocks, or because I'm driving a fine car and I'm young, and they now conclude that I'm a suspect, that tells me that something is wrong with their operational procedure. And therein lies the issue. Criminologists would tell you that tactical units are essential. They are very good. As a kid, I watched SWAT, and I'm sure most of us now today watch SWAT on TV. That's a tactical unit, and we all respect what SWAT does. It's the same thing that SARS should have been doing. But because the functions of SARS were not delineated, the operational order was not very clear in terms of how they should relate with the public, in terms of what sanctions would be meted out to them where there are infractions to the way they should relate in public. Then, unfortunately, the monster that was disbanded a few days ago was created.
And then you must have seen the 5 things that the Nigeria Police Force released, which they rightly tagged 5 things to know about the dissolution of SARS. And I believe the thing or the particular point that has been generating a lot of controversy now is saying that these officers, after they've been disbanded, will be redeployed to other units. So does this not amount to basically just scrapping the name and not solving the real problem here?
Exactly, and that tells us clearly that it is an institutional problem. It is not the problem of that tactical unit. It is an institutional problem, and the only way we can tackle that institutional problem is by police reform. And I'm happy that that's what President Buhari has promised. The only thing we're waiting for is the clear framework as well as timeline for the implementation of that police reform. But to give him credit, he has done 2 things that would provide the platform for police reform. One of them is the recently passed Police Act 2020. It is a review of the existing Police Act, and very importantly, it has elements of the protection of civil liberties and rights of Nigerians and residents alike. So that's a good platform, because once our civil liberties and rights are protected, it means the kind of atrocities that SARS conducted would be either reduced or eliminated completely. The second thing that he has done is the Police Trust Fund. Part of the challenge with the police is issues of salary, welfare, equipment. You cannot send the police with live bullets to go and tame demonstrators. If they feel threatened, then they are going to use those live bullets. There are crowd control mechanisms that are not harmful, as it were. Well, even if they're harmful, they will not kill. Those are the kind of things we hope to see going forward. Police with the right equipment, with the right training, with the right mindset, and with clearly defined and publicized operational orders that once they approach me, I will be able to know, are they going by those operational orders? If they're not going by them, how do I question them? How do I tell them that, no, what you're doing is not in line with your operational orders? So that's the kind of reform, hopefully, that we're hoping to see. And like I said, President Buhari's administration has provided 2 good platforms that would allow that reform.
And we've seen some experts raising concern that the disbandment of SARS now would lead to a surge in criminal cases across the country. And part of the point that the IGP did made is that a new policing arrangement for tackling of offenses of armed robbery and other violent crimes will be reviewed soon. So if you were speaking to the IGP now, what kind of special units or units that would take over the SARS now, what kind of units would you be willing to see?
First off, I would want to correct that impression by many Nigerians. It is not SARS that we should hold responsible for internal security. It is the IG. So whether SARS is existing or not, the safety of the average life and property of a Nigerian lies on the shoulder of the Inspector General of Police. So he should, take responsibility for that. That's the first thing. The second thing that I would recommend to him is whatever unit he create, it is the management of that unit that is important. Like I said earlier on, the 4th Criminal Investigation Department, FCIID, and Intelligence Department has several other tactical units embedded within it. And he needs to ensure better management of those tactical units, from their formation to resource allocation, to their training, to their operational orders, as well as monitoring and evaluation. Even if you give them the best training and give them the best operational procedures, if you do not monitor and evaluate their performances periodically, then the likelihood of them deviating from that order is high. So constant monitoring and evaluation, feedback from the public is very important as part of that feedback. And he said he would create what he calls a synergy unit that would of civil police relationship. Now that is good, but beyond that, there must be a feedback mechanism that would be evaluated constantly. And then, of course, where there is a need to change or improve on existing practices, then he implements that fully.
All right. Mr. Kabir Adamu, we thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us on this very important matter on the program. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Stay safe.
All right, Chita. We'll take a break here, and when we return, we'll be discussing the just concluded Ondo governorship election. Don't go away. All right, welcome back to the program. The Ondo State governorship election has come and gone, and of course a winner has emerged in person of Rotimi Akeredolu, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress APC and incumbent governor of the state. Akeredolu defeated his closest rival and candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Eyitayo Jegede, with 97,039 votes to win another 4-year term in the election. Akeredolu and his deputy governor-elect Lucky Ayedatiwa have received certificates of return from the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) and will soon to be sworn in for their second tenure in office. But joining me now to discuss the conduct and outcome of the election is political affairs analyst Omoru Yaigbe, who joins us via Skype from Abuja. Mr. Yaigbe, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Now, I remember some weeks ago we were talking about Edo governorship election, and you insisted that you couldn't speak so much on the conduct of the election or how far we have gone in terms of conducting election until the Ondo State election is over. Now here we are. So what is your assessment of the Ondo governorship election?
Okay, I'm glad you remember when I said that, because a lot of people are thrown conscious to the wind, celebrating Edo, and I was like, it's too early to celebrate anything, because I knew people were just celebrating and making all of those comments because what went on the media, particularly all of the godfatherism and all of the things we saw in the elections. And of course, I told you the last time that the video that came out from the national leader of the APC wasn't very good for the Edo election. So now we are back in Edo. I was expecting the same level of appreciation to INEC and to Buhari. Those who commended Buhari, I was also expecting them to come out now and commend Buhari for the Ondo election. Because I knew that wasn't what happened in the Edo election. So now after the Ondo, it's clear that people apparently celebrated because of the person they wanted to win election had won. So when the other person wins, people never thought that APC should ever win an election again in this country. So if APC wins, the electoral process was manipulated. If PDP wins, then the election went well. That should not be our narrative. The narrative should be to focus on the processes and to look at the issues vis-a-vis the outcome. PDP won in Edo, and APC had won now in Ondo. And like I said, everybody who applauded the system in Edo must also come out and applaud the system in Ondo, because the thing is almost the same kind of dimension. Whoever got the support won the election. In Ondo election, sincerely, it was an improvement over Edo, improvement the processes, improvement in terms of logistics deployment, improvement even in terms of collation of results. As at PM of Sunday, 6 p.m. of Sunday, after the election was 11 on the 10th. As at 11th of October, 6 p.m. 11th of October, close to 3,000 results have been uploaded. That was against what happened in Edo. So again, there's that consciousness. There's an improvement. Sincerely, there's an improvement.
I mean, ahead of the election, or let's start with after the election now, we got a lot of electoral body also still talking about the same issues, vote buying. What exactly do you make of all of that?
I mean, vote buying has become part of our electoral lexicon. You cannot remove vote buying from the current Nigerian landscape, the current way we operate and processes. It's going to be very difficult to remove violence. I mean, vote buying. The reason being that the politician, governance architecture in this country has literally failed the people. People now go ahead to collect money for the next 4 years. So since we're not going to see you in the next 4 years, there's no big deal. So pay now. I mean, it's like prepay. You prepay ahead of what you're going to do in the next 4 years. So in Edo, there was vote buying. In Ondo, there was vote buying. But I think that in Ondo, even though INEC has put up some layouts in terms of the polling unit, they've done a fantastic job. But the rains of the money, I mean, natural disaster, you can't plan for it. It rained heavily almost across the local government area in Ondo, which impacted on the way the layout was formulated. After the rain, there was some kind of exposure of the ballot papers, I mean, the voting cubicle, to the voters. So while the voting cubicle ought to be a sacred location, when the rain was falling, everyone had clustered around the only available shelter in virtually all of the polling units, which was a canopy INEC has put in place, or the small primary school where they were using as facility. Everybody, in an attempt not to avoid the rain, clustered around the only shelter. And that only shelter was where the elections was going on. So people stayed back to, with or without the rain, processes must continue. And while the voting was now on, it was difficult to hide the ballot. And of course, people saw the ballot and they bought the ballot. It is not about just blaming political parties for buying ballot. It's also important to us also charge the citizenry who sell their ballots, because business can only happen when there are two interests, a buyer and a seller.
And now let's look at issues that happened before the election now. We saw claims and counterclaims, supporters clashing, that's major parties in the election now clashing, their supporters were clashing every now and then. And then for Eyitayo Jegede, we saw like 11 political parties come out to declare support for him. Now, one would have expected that this would have been a very good chance for Jegede to emerge as winner. So what factors did you see play out that eventually led to the emergence of Rotimi Akeredolu as the governor of Ondo State now?
Well, the 11 parties that organized themselves to support the PDP candidate, what base do they have? I mean, it's not enough to say you are supporting a political party or a candidate without any base. In Ondo election, there were just 3 candidates in that poll. In fact, people thought that Agbo Ajayi was going to pull a string, but that didn't happen. Well, for permutation, everyone thought that Agbo would clinch his senatorial district, which is the south, and we expected the governor to clinch his own senatorial district, which is the north. And of course, we expected the PDP candidate Jegede to further consolidate on the south. Don't forget, there was this unwritten rule in the heart of people. The unwritten rule about movement of movement of responsibility, in quote. I'm trying to avoid the common word being used. So it was a turn of the South at the time. Governor Mimiko was from the South, and Governor Mimiko had 8 years in that state as governor of Ondo State. Then the current governor, won election in 2016. And the agitation is, why don't you allow the North to complete his own tenure of 8 years? Then in the South is arguably complaining hard because they are tortured in the last 12 years, according to people we spoke to, from Odibo across to Okitipupa, Esodo, and all of those areas in Ondo North, feel that the governors hadn't really been with them, and that the only school, the School of Science and Tech in Okitipupa, has not received good governance attention. At the time, the school was going to be shut down by the NUC because it lacked very basic facility to run a university. And the community gathered around and did all they could do to ensure that the school. They argued that because the governor is not from the South, that they own those South, they are likely not going to enjoy the governance, the dividends of democracy in the area. That's a very strong argument. But here you are. Agbo Ajayi is a candidate of the ZLP and is from the South. Eita Ejegede is a candidate of the PDP, is from the central area where Governor Mimiko, former Governor Mimiko, had ruled for 8 years. And Mimiko is supporting Ajayi of the ZLP. So you then look at the dimension. Does Mimiko still have the political weight? A lot of people will tell you, no, it doesn't. It doesn't even have the financial muscle anymore to even muster the kind of crowd that you expect. Then, does Aita Ejegede have the will? Does he have it? It becomes the question. So from all analysis, it was clear that the inability of the PDP to agree with Agbola was going to impact negatively on the PDP. All of those 11 candidates who supported the PDP candidate, in my opinion, they wouldn't get more than 5,000 votes. But the only actor that would generate a lot of votes was the ZLP candidate who refused to agree with the PDP. And of course, I'm sure you know the story. When Aita Ejegede won the primaries, Agbo threw himself to say, let me be your deputy. And that didn't happen. And it made every attempt to have an agreement. Everyone wants to be governor. And these three people have a huge advantage to be governor. I mean, whether it's Akiti or it's Jegede or it's Agbo, the three of them had the possibility of being elected. How did Akiti become governor? Very simple. Agbo pulled out some vote from the PDP. And the people who are to follow Agbo to secure the vote from PDP, Aita Ejegede pulled out some vote from them. And the people who are in between this, whether it's Jegede and Agbo, went to support the governor. And again, people say a lot of fake news also went ahead. So several fake news that the pastor that was sentenced to life imprisonment supporting Jegede. And people were angry that the pastor, I'm sure you heard a story about
those are just allegations that we cannot prove at this time anyway. But
it's fake news. It's fake news. I said it's fake news.
Of course.
But it has a way of shaping perception. Those fake news added up to the fact that Jegede, who ought to be the beloved, so to say, has lost a part of the supporter to ZLP. And here is the governor who has support across the board, either by appointed position or maybe a commissioner, special advisor, local government chair, all in his support. And all the division between PDP and ZLP actually made a lot of sense for the governor to amend.
Lastly now, Mr. Egbe, and very briefly before I let you go, from the Edo and Ondo election, we've sort of seen a kind of shift in voter attitude. So now, do you think that, or how do you think that we can carry this on to other elections going forward?
INEC has improved, and INEC should continue to improve. The ZPAD technology is very important for us at this material time. Right now, as you also know, INEC is thinking about electronic voting or digital voting, not not really internet-based vote. If that emerges, then we need to interrogate further. But what is important is that the ZELPAD used at the polling unit has improved processes. You don't have to wait until collation point for the political party or actors, including media organizations, to organize themselves and organize all of those from AC8A that have been posted on the INEC viewing portal, to organize them and do a collation at our individual point and know those who are winning. Any manipulation could actually raise any other, could actually be very detrimental to whoever is manipulating the process. The ZELPAD is an innovation that should be applauded, and we need more innovation from INEC.
Mr. Mori Aigbe, political analyst, we thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us on the Ondo election here on Analysis. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. And that's why we'll call it a wrap on this episode of Analysis. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.